2024 marks the 20th year anniversary of the original release of Star Wars Battlefront. So when fans were greeted back in February 2024 with a surprise announcement of the Star Wars Battlefront Classic Collection, there was genuine buzz around being able to play these games again, or in some cases playing them for the first time. These games never appeared on Nintendo consoles before, and were not playable on modern-day consoles at all. The collection included both Battlefront 1 and Battlefront 2, and would feature 64-player online server support for PlayStation, Xbox, Switch, and PC. And while this release of the Classic Collection was great for fans of the originals, it would also stand in contrast to the DICE-developed Battlefront 1 and 2 from EA from last generation. Battlefront 1 and Battlefront 2, developed by DICE and published by EA, never really hit the same as the originals. The game featured similar class-based gameplay on large-scale maps, with hero characters like Darth Vader, Darth Maul, Boba Fett, and the new characters from the new trilogy, but never really replicated what the original games brought to them. Unfortunately, this collection wouldn't pan out as everybody had hoped. The collection was developed by Aspyr Media, a name you'll recognize if you remember the Star Wars KOTOR remake announced at the PlayStation Showcase a few years ago. The collection features no serious increase in fidelity except for an upres, and looks and plays largely the same as the originals. Aspyr Media, though, is a developer whose name sort of precedes it nowadays. Back when developing KOTOR 2 on the Nintendo Switch, they had to cancel what was previously planned DLC, and then just last year, they were taken off the KOTOR remake, where development shifted to Saber Interactive. So while the announcement was exciting, there was trepidation in what might be a troubled port, and unfortunately, everybody's fears were sort of proven correct this week. The game is launched to server issues, bugs, and in some cases, warped visual glitches or audio, issues where connecting controllers or disconnecting controllers causes problems, or even complete crashes. This game is essentially a disaster for what should have been a slam dunk. I think players really just wanted a functional port of both of these beloved titles, with servers that were active and not riddled with hackers. It's especially painful though, because the collection isn't cheap. Both of these games, which while available on PC, had been previously less than $5 each, were being packaged together in this collection for $35 USD. And while I think that price is a bit unfair, and what I think speaks to a conversation further about game value, it kind of makes you wonder just how these publishers and companies are continuing to charge large prices for games that just don't function anymore at launch. Everybody remembers Cyberpunk at launch. The game had tons of issues. Last generation consoles probably shouldn't have even had ports to begin with, considering how rough they were at launch, or how rough they still continue to be even despite all the patches they've done. Games like the Master Chief Collection, which took years of continued development to get to a really stable place before they were ported to PC. Aliens Colonial Marines, Assassin's Creed Unity, which was another massive game that had tons of issues at launch. The industry is no stranger to launching games in unfinished states, and considering the way development goes, it's kind of expected, but for how much they're charging, it really is becoming less and less acceptable as time goes on. Since the problems with Star Wars, the devs have acknowledged the issues and are working behind the scenes, but I think it still leaves a bad taste in everybody's mouth for what should have been such an easy win for customers and for Aspyr Media. And even despite all these other issues, we see now that Aspyr Media has been using the work from modders and incorporated it into the game, with no credit to show for it, no financial compensation, almost wholesale lifting their work and repurposing it as their own. Now, initially they denied these reports that such a thing had happened, but they've since patched the game to remove some of the content related to these mods. I think all of the issues surrounding this Classics collection sort of highlights broader issues within the industry when it comes to game value and the continual reliance on remasters from, say, Sony or publishers at large. I don't think anybody has an issue with a remaster or a remake. I mean, the industry, by and large, has purchased Skyrim tens upon tens of millions of times through its various iterations in the Special Edition and the Anniversary Edition, among all the other re-releases across all the different native platform ports. Equally so, games like Resident Evil 4 Remake, which have been very successful in the way that they've recreated the experience from the original for modern hardware and more modern sensibilities. That game is recently reported to have sold 7+ million copies for Capcom. It's one of their most successful titles. The issue here isn't that somebody is remaking or re-releasing a game and charging $35 for it, of a collection of 2 games that are beloved by fans. The issue is that this package is bad value and sort of highlights low effort investment from Aspyr Media and Embracer in creating this collection, with no regard for fans of the original or for customers who might actually want to experience these games on a modern platform. And on top of all of that, it's the shadiness of denying and then having to retroactively patch out content related to other people's work. Part of the unease with the KOTOR remake, for example, was because Aspyr Media had really been an unproven studio. They haven't done a lot of work people can look to with confidence that they might get this right. And something like the KOTOR remake, which is such a beloved sub-series of the Star Wars video games, remaking those games should come from a place of extreme reverence and love for the originals, so that fans will be served best with an experience that recreates a lot of the originals' appeal while making it more modern and more palatable for people who are sort of uninterested in going back to the originals. I think we should count ourselves very lucky that the KOTOR remake has shifted development from Aspyr to Saber Interactive. The value of games and what people perceive to be the value of games is a constant conversation in the industry. People still look on at Sony, for example, with some sort of ire that they're charging $10 for what is PS4 to PS5 upgrades in some cases, like with Ghost of Tsushima, for example. And I think when I look at that price increase for the upgrade, I don't see it as much of an issue, especially when you compare it to things like this, where they're trying to charge $35 for games that were at their lowest on Steam, for example, under $5 each. These games have been quite cheap before. This looks more like an attempt to repackage old games and a brand new offering and just raise the price, rather than say offer really good value. Additionally, the conversation around game value continues with regards to games being now $70 versus what they used to be in $60. And when you see smaller titles like Prince of Persia: The Lost Crown, Helldivers 2, and others start to explore this smaller price point where they're still offering great value, it makes products like this Battlefront Classic Collection look less and less valuable and more like poor attempts at price gouging customers to play something they've never been able to play before. Now, it's certainly true that you can't play these games on modern platforms. It's never been available on Nintendo Switch, the Wii, or Wii U. It's not available on any of the PlayStation consoles since the PS2. You can actually play the originals on modern Xbox consoles via backwards compatibility, but the servers have been long dead, so the only option you have is to play it in single player. There certainly is value in what they're offering in making this available for modern hardware and modern consoles, on top of the small fidelity upgrades they're doing. But I think when you look at what they've offered here, the degree to which they've improved the experience over the originals, you'd be left with less confidence that you're getting good value for your money in paying full price for this product. As always, it's important that we vote with our wallets and spend money on things we want to see more of or continue to support, and to avoid games and not spend money on things we don't want to support. If the value on offer here is something you find worth the money, then you should buy the game and you should support it. Me personally, I see something like this and I think to myself that this is a kind of product and this is the kind of behavior we should avoid encouraging from publishers. Low effort remakes, low effort repackaging of previously already available titles with minimal effort. This is the kind of stuff that leads to worse products and worse value the longer you support it and the longer you encourage the behavior with your money. That's going to do it for me, guys. Thanks again for watching, and I'll see you in the next one.